Alrighty, so we should be live. Can you still hear me over there, Carol?
Oh yeah, I can hear you.
All right, beautiful. So, thanks to all for tuning in. This is our last scheduled live stream, at least our last scheduled live stream that relates to going to directions. I've definitely got some more in the hopper, so don't fret. We'll be coming back with live series for some other topics, but I'm very honored and happy to have Carol Livingston as our final guest on the Road to Direction series. Carol, pleasure to have you. Thanks for attending.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, for having me. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
For sure. So, Carol is currently the head over at Dynamics Connections, which is a more or less independent company to help different ISVs make connections. But beyond that, you've been in the channel for a long time. I know you've got over 20 years of experience in the ERP space. I am a little curious about that experience because you and I have never talked about that. I've never really talked to you in detail about what you did before you got to Dynamics Connection. So I don't know, give me a little background on how you got into this space originally.
Well, yeah, actually I started out in accounting and finance. So it's kind of a weird pathway, kind of halfway through moved into doing technology consulting because I had used, ERP systems, Microsoft systems, and implemented them as a user. So that's kind of what kind of got me intrigued. I liked the variety. I liked the challenge of, helping customers learn how to, use that in their business and solve some business challenges. So got into consulting and different roles. And I worked at small partners on the East Coast and the West Coast of the United States. And then I worked for a large international partner, Columbus Global, as their professional service director. So kind of a interesting journey. And how I got here was I learned of a colleague that started this business to really help educate partners about ISVs. And I had participated myself in those programs and really valued that learning experience and the resources. So I bought that business. Nice. So I liked it so much. Yeah. So I do that now, last couple of years. So yeah, Kevin, you and I worked together recently. So
yeah, I was going to say, full disclosure, I was one of those ISVs in your last semester or last year. Yeah. It was a great experience. I mean, I've learned more about the channel in the past 6 months. Which I guess, maybe there's some factors outside of being a part of your program, but I mean, it definitely helped. It got a lot of information that.
Yeah, kind of get you right into meeting those partners. And so instead of trying to, a lot of partners are busy. They don't return those phone calls or LinkedIn messages. So that's what I do is I help get those introductions. Yeah,
exactly. It felt like it bridged the gap of like a lot of soft knowledge that I always struggled to attain just from like a pure online world perspective. Yeah, felt like I couldn't crack I don't know exactly how to explain it. Couldn't crack like how the community functioned without either A, already being in it, or B, meeting people in person and doing all that. So it was definitely helpful on that front.
Especially with the world of work remote, a lot of people aren't meeting in person, and it's even harder. And I think in the end, consulting to me was a relationship business, right? And so I just carry that over. It is a relationship business. People work with people they like and trust, and they want, to, work with the people that they enjoy working with. So, relationships and getting to know people as people, and not just professional or their products and services, but, making sure that they're a good match for your organization.
It's funny how much of obviously you have your role in the community now, but I've talked to people that are like putting on this event. I've talked to like other ISVs. I've talked to people who are like actual partners in the channel. And it seems like we always have like the same conversation, which is that like people do really like talking to people and like working with people. Yep. And it's, I don't know, we're still like over at Fidesic, we're still like overcoming the like hangover of us trying to be like fake business professional for so long and like really boring business professional. So it's like, this is sort of us like actually learning how to do this the proper ways and not be on the outside. And it really is just relationship building, which is cool because that's like actually pretty enjoyable too, right? It's way more fun than like fake super professional business branding.
Well, and I think that's what I enjoy is I get to know the partners and, Like I'll find out things about what's going on them personally or their organization. And, you know, I'm not inside that organization, so like a lot of people talk to me.
Yeah, people probably tell you everything, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes I feel like a little bit of a counseling role there, but you know, it's okay. They trust me, so I'm not going to go out and blab their, you know, secrets.
So if you've been around the space for a long time in different roles, technology, ERP, like the software side of things, do you recall the first directions that you went to, since directions is like the topic?
Yeah, I think we talked about this. This is actually my first time attending.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You did tell me that. I forgot about that. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so I'm kind of mainly a newbie to the conference. I didn't go last year. I had, you know, some medical stuff going on, so I just wasn't able to attend. But yeah, I mean, even kind of the last couple of years, I think they didn't even have a conference or had it virtually. So, you know, we're kind of now getting back to in-person events. So I've been to other conferences though. So I'm kind of relating to, you know, kind of talking about going to the conference in terms of my past experiences and other conferences that I attend now.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I forgot that this is your first, which is actually why it's great that you're the end on this, because it's like you and I have been looking into this for months on end, right? We can kind of compare notes on what we've seen about it.
I know, exactly.
I've heard all the stories of directions and like how it's just the different vibe. And, you know, I had John Rivers on here for the first one of these, and like the thing that he always drove, like his main shtick and the thing that he was driving home on the whole thing is like, all right, the second it starts, like just drop your competitive, like, mindset on everybody that you're talking to. Like, we're all here to learn, we're all here to like network, we're all here to connect with people. Who cares if they're like a competitor in some level? Like, there's still something to be learned from them, and there's still something to like be gained by having a relationship with that person. And I think that's like the thing that excites me the most. And that was always what was, you know, at the other conferences, and the way that John puts it is, you know, when there aren't customers there, like the vibe is just totally different, right? So it's like people,
well, that's a good point. This is a partner conference only, so it is, you know, for partners, and it's managed by partners. You know, they're volunteers that put this event together, and so you know, it really is content that, you know, partners are interested in, and they want to learn and build their businesses and kind of find out what's working, what's not from other partners. And ISVs too, and you also have Microsoft there, which is kind of a cool. You know, where we can kind of have the up close and conversations with them, or hear directly from their executives and product teams. So I'm excited about that. That is unique because a lot of the other conferences I've attended, you know, tend to be more user conferences, which I love the community. I love users. But, you know, it's nice just to have a conference that's just for partners.
Yeah, for sure. That is definitely the thing that I'm most, well, maybe not the thing I'm most excited about, but one of the things I'm very excited about is every session, like I'm kind of the target market for it, as opposed to when I was down at Summit, like, you know, great for the end users. I'm sure there's lots of good info there, but I don't care about like extra functions on certain windows and account. Like I just, I don't care.
Like bank rec, you know, I don't really care about bank rec or how to, you know, create a bomb on manufacturing. Yeah. I get that.
No discredit to Nolan, but I don't really care about bank rec in a lot of ways. So
yeah. So
I mean, but customers do, which is great. Again, like it's important that exists, but this feels more like the event that is like directed towards me specifically, which is really nice. I'm excited to learn a lot about that. So from going to all these different events throughout the years, sort of question one I have is just like sort of general, and it's like, what have you learned in the last post-COVID conference world that you've thought is like interesting or like learned about in going to these events over the past couple of years? And then part two of that is, I know that you've been dabbling in the Acumatica community too, and going to those events. So I'm curious what, if any, differences there are between those two communities, or are they sort of the same ideas?
Well, you know, there's a lot of similarities, right? You know, between the events. I'll say, you know, like in the Dynamics world, you know, Microsoft has their Inspire event, and, you know, they have some of their own partner events, which are much bigger events in terms of topics and, you know, very specific to software, you know, Microsoft stack. But what I see with like user events and the Dynamics communities are about how to use the software the best, how to leverage it. I think directions is more going to be, and just kind of hoping that I can learn this is, what are the new cutting edge things? What are kind of other partners doing and taking on? Because I see a lot of partners not, they're kind of doing the same thing that they've always done, and that's not going to, they're not going to get into the future, right? So they're going to need to be aware, and their consultants and their sales team all need to be aware of these things and begin to make that plan as part of their business. The same thing at other conferences, right? Like I went to Acumatica Summit, and that actually is hosted by Acumatica, but there's overall probably about 2/3 of it was partners and ISVs, and a third were customers. But they're talking about and promoting, of course, their software, right? It's the best in the world, and look at all these great customer success stories. And so it was a lot of hoopla, right? Around different things that makes them look great and makes customers and partners want to join their community. So that's all great. I loved it. I thought they did a really good job. It was one of the best events I'd ever attended. Over 4,000 people attended. And so I'd say, in other software worlds, the events are run by the software company, where I think what's different in the Dynamics community is we have a lot more user or partner events that are by users for users, right? So I think that is a little bit more unique. And Acumatica does have their user groups, and they have their events as well. But I think that it's pretty strong. The community is pretty strong in Dynamics, right? They really.
I do get that sort of general vibe from the Microsoft communities, like, because we kind of had to like organize ourselves for the past 10 years or so, right? There's definitely a strong community, self-supported vibe within the whole Dynamics community in general, which is kind of crazy when you think about how like big it is and how well connected it is all to Microsoft. But somehow it still has like that grassroots sort of vibe, is the way you would phrase it, right? It's like definitely more grassroots than I would imagine one that's officially sponsored. And I did go to Convergence ages ago, back in the day, and that was definitely a lot. I don't know. Maybe, I guess I can't say for sure it was a lot bigger, because I was a lot smaller, I suppose. So
seemed bigger anyway.
Yeah, it seemed very big and very intimidating and very formal, but that was probably just my 23-year-old bias at the time, trying to figure out how to make heads or tails of that conference.
Well, and I think that in the Dynamics community, there's a lot of MVPs and, community members have been in the channel a long time. And so, that's great. My concern is, kind of the future, right? We need the younger generation. We need young professionals in this space too. And so, that I'm hoping to see a change in the next few years, that we get a lot more, diversity, I guess, in the age groups, because I do see a lot of aging people attending these things, and that's great. And there's a lot of friends and connections there, but they don't tend to welcome, or, they don't necessarily see, it's not their fault. They just like see their friends, and they're like there to hang out with their friends. But when I go or you go, we're like, I don't know anybody. So we're just talking to people, right? And so
that's 100% true. And that's, again, mentioning threads that have come up multiple times in these conversations, the sort of demographics of the, both coming from GP world, the demographics of GP space aren't great in terms of the future. It feels that way sometimes. And that's one of the things that's got me excited about, like, spending more time in the Business Central side of things, because I do think it is different in terms of like the like vigor or around the community, right? Like people are excited about learning, people are excited about the future. It feels less established. And, I'm showing my own bias there, that it was pretty easy to feel like we're on the outside of the GP community, because we, weren't there for 20 years and didn't have, a 15-year relationship with somebody that, like, I can't compete with that. I always felt like we were kind of on the outside around that. But BC space, like, feels like the Wild West in a good way in a lot of ways. It's like nobody knows exactly what's going to happen with, like, all the partners and everything. And it's, like, exciting. There's a lot going on.
And even though Microsoft is doing a lot of investment in this area, in Business Central, I still see there's a lot of opportunities, right? There's definitely gaps in the software or, improvements. And so that's what's exciting to me is it's kind of like a new toy, right? We can help the community grow that and Microsoft as well and see their direction and their innovation and sometimes their vision, is probably way out in the future, right? Where we're kind of in today's mode, right? Like, okay, we're on-prem. How do we get to the cloud? Okay, well, now we're in the cloud. How do we take advantage of all of these new, technologies and digital features? So
I think they've done a really good job of like making the base platform easy enough to like connect with and build a solution on top of that. Like I've said this before, but I feel like there's like I can kind of see their vision with it now, which I couldn't before. And it's just like it is this like base cloud-based thing, and then there's all these easy like collections of suites that you can add onto it, and you're like, oh, I'm a healthcare company. Grab this bundle of tools and put that on there, and now we're set up for like your healthcare company version of DC. And it's really cool. Like, I can see the vision a little bit now, and it's finally starting to come together. Which is maybe it's me being ignorant of it, but it didn't really feel like that like 5 or more years ago. I was kind of confused as to what like the strategy was with Business Central. So I was probably just out of the way,
I don't know. This is the Carol speaking, but anything kind of version 1 of Microsoft is always lacking, right? They get their foot out there, which is great. But I'm looking forward to the investments they're making and the improvements they're making is way more than what they had originally in the product. So, and I'll kind of go back to just because of my GP background. There's a lot of clients that want to stay on GP, and there's no reason for them to move either. They've got a great product. Microsoft's going to support it till 2028 and beyond. Yeah. So, you've got time to kind of plan that out. What's that look like, your future for your ERP system? There's not a hurry, I don't feel like. I mean, I think Microsoft would love us all to just migrate to the cloud tomorrow, but
100%. That's I think they've made their intentions clear, but that doesn't mean it's the right play for everybody, right?
Right. And I think that we'll see a lot of GP partners at this event at Directions, because they're trying to check it out and understand and learn, so I applaud those GP partners that are trying to understand and make better plans around their support of their customers and their future on the cloud. So
yeah, and it's a little weird to talk about it during the BC Directions event chat, but I want to make clear, like in talking to a lot of our GP customers and just casually bringing up, do you guys have any plans? Are you moving to BC and moving to the cloud? And most of them are just like,
no.
Why? And I'm like, well, it's on the cloud and it's the future, and they're like, like.
That's a good point. I hear that a lot from partners too. Their GP customers aren't on-prem. They're not ready to move. They don't see that investment benefiting a business right now. Right.
It's still a huge investment, right? Like it's a substantial decision.
It definitely is, but I think we have to be ready, and we have to also look at what other. I always say that Microsoft always has had that modern workplace in mind for all users, right? We've got everything integrated with Office and Teams and Power Platform. I mean, those all work with Dynamics GP as well as Business Central. So you've got these different, ways to leverage and become more modern, in your journey to the cloud. So I definitely don't think it's this or that. It's both.
Yeah, for sure. So kind of pivoting from that, in going to a conference, something I've been trying to like ask everybody and sort of get people's perception on is, what are your metrics? So before you go into a conference, you probably write down a list of your goals. You write down a list of like, all right, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. what are those for you? And obviously everybody's like, your viewpoint is going to be a little bit different than like pure
Sure.
ISV or Microsoft partner, but I'm always curious to see like what individuals' goals are when they go into these things, and sort of bigger than that, like what at the end of this, when you get done, do you go, all right, that was successful, I like got my money's worth, or however you want to frame it with yourself, right? What are those goals, and how do you know it was successful?
Yeah, well, obviously in-person events, it's about meeting people and, gaining more business, obviously more leads or more contacts and more building those relationships. There's many ways to kind of do that. I guess for me, my goal, like going to directions, is meeting more Microsoft partners. I constantly am looking for more partners to join my program, right? Get that ISV education. And so I'm looking forward, and my goal is to meet, more partners that would find value in my service. And, and I think, that might be my goal, but I have to do a little bit of thinking about the plan before I get there. There's a lot of partners I have on my list that I want to meet. And so I'll be reaching out to them on LinkedIn or ahead of time to really say, hey, can we meet up for, a half hour or for a drink or at breakfast, and kind of get those appointments. I found when I did that at the last conference I attended at Acumatica that I had appointments already kind of set up, or tentatively, like, oh, okay, well, let's meet after the keynote or something.
Yep.
So you're going to meet up with them and you are going to make that contact. That's a lot better than just wandering the hallway. I mean, there's value in that too. But, instead of just kind of going booth to booth in the expo hall, I'm going to try to get those appointments while I'm at the conference and meet people. That's really my goal. Other times in my career, I probably would have been more about, kind of building my own personal brand, speaking at the sessions, meeting users or partners. And I'm not so much interested in that now. I have kind of a target list of people I need to meet, and it's a great opportunity to get in person. And the other thing is that I have a lot of people I meet with, lots of partners I talk to, and I only see them on a little tiny, computer screen. So it's a great opportunity to see them in person. And kind of a funny story on that. At the last event, I was trying to meet somebody, and we had kind of said we're going to meet at this time, and we got each other's cell phones and text each other, and I realized, I'm looking at LinkedIn and looking at his profile picture, trying to figure out in the hallway where we said we're going to meet, where is he? And I'm looking at all the people walking by, I'm looking at my phone.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, well, you know what? A lot of people's profiles on LinkedIn are not what they look like right now.
I'm making it
number one.
I'm trying to keep mine up to date yearly. That's got to be my goal, because that always annoys me when people look like so different.
Wish people, I think that they get the best photo of them, that they like, taken, right? That's right. That was taken 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or and so that makes it tough. Like, are they taller or shorter than you think? Like, I know some people I've met and I've worked with over Zoom and for many months, and then I meet them in person. I'm like, they're a lot taller or shorter than I imagined, right? So you kind of like just getting that chance to meet people in person. It builds that relationship, but it is kind of fun to, get away from the computer screen and get to meet people actually in person.
For sure. The richness of in-person communication, right? It's all the like non-verbal, like things that they kind of work on a video call, but they don't, it's not even close to the same thing, right? Like you really can't tell.
Yeah. Well, and I think like John, like you said, you interviewed him, John Rivers, talked about directions, like, hang out, don't rush off to your room to answer email. Like, put that,
who cares
clear
about email
calendar,
week, right? Cancel email.
Yeah, focus on, you're there, you spent the money, or your company spent the money, be there, be present and available and hang out. I think if there is value to go to breakfast, like don't skip breakfast, go to breakfast. You will meet people. I've met.
That's funny. I was just looking at like the daily schedule and I was like, all right, when can I like go do some chill time? And I was like, breakfast. That doesn't seem that important to me.
I don't know. This is just me and me. I'm not really a morning person, so I'll just cut that up front. But
Same.
I think it's important to get to those events, because that's another kind of way where people are sort of their guard is down, they're eating breakfast or chit-chatting, with their colleagues. But it's a good chance to say, well, what do you do? And, and then they'll ask you, well, what do you do? And so you get to know each other. I've met at user events, I've met users, and I'm like, well, what are your goals for this event? What are you trying to accomplish? Because I'm kind of curious. And then I circle back later, I see them in the hallway, and I'm like, how's that going? Did you learn about this or that problem? And they're like, you know what? I did get some ideas, and I solved this. And I'm like, oh, well, you should check out this expo booth over here, because they also kind of address that issue. So, you can make connections wherever you are. Just you have to be open to it, right? You have to have that, just instead of like in your phone or in your laptop. I see a lot of people working, and that's fine. Probably someone will scoot up next to you and say, can I sit here? And then you start up a conversation, and you realize you have a lot more common suddenly with that person. And then somebody else comes up, and then you're like, hey, did you know that this person does this? And you kind of introduce them to the new person that just joined your little group there. So, you don't have to know people. People go to conferences to meet people, and they're interested in hearing about different, goals that people are trying to accomplish during that event. And so.
One of the tips I saw from somebody that I know down when I was down at Summit, which I thought was really great, is like he had his punch list written out like in like a nice little like notebook of people that he was trying to meet and like where they were. And it just like, it's such a different framing than like I've got like a scorecard in a spreadsheet on my phone. It like feels so like robotic and impersonal versus like you have your little notebook written down and you're like, oh, I want to meet this person. And it just, I don't know, it feels way more organic and like less
right.
So contrived,
I do think I do think that people should have kind of a goal in mind, right? And some appointments, but you do need to build in some flexibility for that hallway time or walking the expo hall or going to the reception so you can meet people.
And John and I talked about this briefly, that like don't invest your time at a conference doing the things that you can do online. Like if you're just going to have like a one-to-one like business conversation that's like you're with somebody you already have a relationship with, I mean, you can do that while you're down there, but like that's one of the situations that works almost as good on a video call, right? Like you already have an established relationship. You already like have your topic of conversation. You like already have your goals of the meeting. You can kind of do that over a video call now. But like the serendipity of just like meeting somebody and like striking up a conversation and realizing you both like riding bikes or, whatever.
Right.
That does not exist outside the framework of like a conference meeting people. So it's like,
well, and I find that people like to talk about themselves. So I'll always like ask, more questions. I guess I'm like the kid that says, why? Well, how'd you get into that? Well, tell me more. Oh, you're interested in Harley motorbikes? How did you get into that? So you'd be surprised how kind of getting to know people and their personal, interests and hobbies and things too can help, even if it's someone you work with professionally already. Because now you know them on a deeper level, and it just makes it easier when you have a conversation, good or bad, in the future.
Yeah, hey, at Summit, I was hanging out with the Binary Stream guys and just talking to them about watching Hockey Night in Canada as a kid growing up in Michigan, because we live close enough to the border of Canada that like we could pick up the TV signal from Canada. So they're like, Don Cherry? And I'm like, I grew up on Don Cherry. So shout outs to the Canadians who watch Hockey Night in Canada. Michigan, Canada's little bro. We were there with you, so we were hanging out watching. But that's like type of stuff, like, what are you going to do? You going to talk about that on a Zoom call? Like, no, it's never going to come up.
No, because usually people are back to back with their meetings, so they don't really have time for chit chat, right? So
it's like the exhausting nature of Zoom calls too, for some reason. I don't know why they're so exhausting, but they just are, which is one of the things, again, I think I've noticed by going to these conferences, going back to it, it's like in my head, it kind of, because of COVID and just like how strange the past few years was, it was just like, I can't survive 8 hours of being social. It's going to be exhausting. But in person, it's like 1,000% less exhausting for some reason.
It is. I mean, I still find it pretty exhausting. It's a long day. You start early, you
Mm-hmm.
go to the keynote to, mingle with people. You're at
It's
the expo
tiring.
hall. It is tiring physically. And I'd say, I guess another tip is wear comfortable shoes. That's another. It's a funny story. At Summit last year, I brought shoes that were not good. And I guess on this remote work, work
You
remote
forget what
from
yeah.
home world, I've worn my Crocs every day.
You should wear your Crocs, girl. That's what you need to do.
I know, right? They're Mickey Mouse ones too, by the way. Anyway, so I wear those every day. But when you go to the conference, I was like, shoot, I don't have any stock. I'm not out buying a business wardrobe for conferences. So yeah, I was not prepared. I had to wear tennis shoes the rest of the event because my feet hurt so bad.
Yeah. I definitely had to go to the store and buy some post-COVID semi-professional clothing for sure. It had been a while since I've done that.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yoga pants, I guess that doesn't count as professional wear.
Yeah, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd be there with it. Yeah, that's funny. So, any predictions on what you think Microsoft's bringing to the table on directions this year, or really anybody? What do you think? What do you think the news is going to be? Can I put you on the record? And any predictions on what's coming?
Well, yeah, that's actually kind of interesting. So, I'm hoping to hear from Microsoft because there's been recently a little squabble with Microsoft over leads and sales leads. Kind of SMB Business Apps Group started a new kind of trial, a web experience to help really match potential sales leads with partners. And there's been a lot of controversy and concerns. True. And so I know Mike Morton will be at Directions, that he'll talk more about this and try to address that concern more. But it is a trial, I mean, they got to start somewhere, right? But
yeah, that's an interesting one. That has been a bit of a sore point around the community, hasn't it? Because that whole system isn't super fleshed out yet, in my opinion. It's still in they're figuring it out, right?
It's not, but I can understand from the partner perspective. Wait, you put in all your data, and then you're always directed to a partner that's not your existing partner. Number one, if you already have a partner, and number two, it might be always kind of these select group of partners. So, how do you know what industries I work with or my specialties? Microsoft may not know that, right? Yeah. So, it feels like that's going to be kind of the controversy of the day, but I don't know. Another one is I'm hoping to hear more about the ISV Connect program. I know they talked about it at Inspire last year, and there's, I think, 2,200 ISVs in that program that are certified, and I just want to understand that better. They every year, it seems like we get a new program from Microsoft, but this one seems to be the one that ISVs need to pay attention to. So I'm kind of interested to hear if they talk about that. But yeah, so there's a lot to hear, I'm sure, from Microsoft and product direction. That I think they're bringing. Didn't John say something like 60 or 70 people? Anyway, it's a lot
of people. Yeah, I don't remember the exact number, but it's that ballpark for sure.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to hearing from the product direction. I think they're going to do the keynotes, the closing session. So yeah, I want to hear from those executives. I think that would be good.
Yeah, I agree. The ISV Connect is definitely interesting, and something that it's one of those things that's sort of hard to fully understand if you're not there.
Well, and I went online and watched some videos and things from after Inspire, and I was like, okay, well, they're saying they have tons of people to help ISVs with this, but I'm like, who are they? I don't. I still don't know, right? It's like, but how do you even get onboarded here? So yeah.
So what are some of the things that you find challenging about going to conferences? What are the big challenges of going to these events? And I guess just generally, we can talk about all general events or anything specific to this that's been challenging in planning.
Well, I've been a speaker and also an attendee at the same time. And that's always challenging because if you're a speaker, you get tons of prep time. You got to kind of promote it. If you have an ISV, if you're an ISV with a booth, you got to get people aware that you're going to be there in person. I think that's challenging, right? You've got kind of split your time, not just you as an attendee, but maybe you as a sponsor or a speaker. you have a lot on your plate, right? So that's always been really challenging. I've kind of thought about this, kind of even going forward. Do I even want to submit a speaker session? I do think it gives you a good chance to meet people and, kind of give your brand or your knowledge, and share that with the community, which is always good. But at the same time, you don't realize how much time those people invest. They want to make sure everything works perfectly when they're demoing something. They want to make sure they have all the facts, and they may not even cover any of that, but they want to be prepared. So they're investing a lot of time in preparing. So I think that's a challenge. But I think just attending, if you've got a plan, don't just go and not have a goal in mind. Like, okay, I want to learn more, or I want to network, or I want to meet key customers. I want to be there when my customers are there. Kind of have a goal in mind and make sure that you make time for that, and then have flexibility that and kind of do the things that might just sort of inspire you at the last minute to join or do.
The thing I've been thinking about in that vein is like not overextending your resources while you're there. Like, as a company like us, I'm not going to show up with a team of 14 people, 9 of which work the booth, and then I can go network and do it. Like, it's just not realistic for us. So
right.
It's okay. What is the most important thing? Which is, probably they won't want to hear it, but I'm excited to not have a booth at Directions, because that's like a whole wing of obligation that I can just be like, all right, not this year. Don't have to worry about it. Don't have to spend, 20 hours of my own energy and effort to like make sure that we're doing a good job on that, and then not have that opportunity to just go network with people. So it's like dividing and conquering, I guess. And hopefully we get to a point where we can
Kevin,
do both, right?
I think it's important to have presence at these things and be there. Like when I worked at one of the partners I worked at, a large one, they didn't even want to have a booth. They're like, well, we need to have so many, opportunities that come out of it to justify it. And I'm like, you know what? If you're not there, it's almost like you're invisible. You have to have presence, and you do need a certain number of people so that you're not just in the booth all the time. Because I've been stuck in the booth and doing booth duty, and that's not fun, to go to a conference and then you're stuck there. So you've got to have at least someone that can, be your booth buddy, if you will. I think Dave Musgrave calls it his booth babe, but someone that can kind of man the booth, and then you can, then go and walk the floor and meet people, go get a bite to eat, that you're not always there. So you just have to kind of figure out what makes sense with your resources. But I do think it does make sense for partners to be there and have a booth. And I think at this conference, they always have challenges where they get sold out, at the Directions conference. So it was pretty popular, and you kind of need to plan that in advance. So, but I mean, I understand, what you're saying. I've been doing booth duty in my past life, and I felt a little bit trapped.
It takes a lot out of you, for sure. It's just a constant stream of people and trying to gauge them. Like, are they there to talk to you, and are they interested, or do they just want to get the coupon to win the whatever? I don't know. Right,
win the prize. Well, and I think those are good, because then they get people to engage with you. I've seen giveaways really draw people. I've also seen, some real gags where they're like got flashy lights on themselves and on their booth, and all kinds of people stand around in colored shirts that match, and all that is great. But I kind of walk around those ones. I tend to go to the ones where there's 1 or 2 people sitting by themselves.
Right.
I'll go up and talk to them, and I get the best conversations out of those meetings than I do with the big booth with lots of people, And you probably already have a relationship in some cases with some of those folks. But I don't go for swag, like a lot of that stuff, I just walk by. I don't pick it up. But my favorite piece of swag that I've ever gotten, though, actually is that little camera slide on your laptop. It's branded, but it's a little tiny thing. And it actually is my favorite piece of swag I've ever gotten, and doesn't take up much space to bring that home, versus a water bottle or something.
I'm a bit of a water bottle aficionado though, so I'll always take a water bottle if I see one. So
Well,
I mean,
good
that's
for
like
you.
the moral of all of this, right? Is like it's different for different people,
Yeah.
and it's like the
Yeah.
gimmick booths with like the people in matching shirts and everything. I'm sure that appeals to a certain group of people that like, and it works really well, right? And that's like the thing that I've been down this tangent a lot lately. It's like, okay, how do we like inject our actual corporate like culture into how we're presenting ourselves? And that's one of the things that I realized that we've been doing not a great job of over the years, is like there's a huge mismatch between like, okay, how we like behave. Not even behave sounds bad, like we're like doing something wrong, but you know, like what our like corporate values are and how we like talk to each other, and like sort of the vibe that we all have. There's been like a mismatch on like our public face and marketing, and that just like, I don't know, it doesn't work, right?
Yeah. Well, what I found is Fidesic is a really fun group of people, and you guys have a really
Never
good
would have
product.
got that from our website, right?
But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have never known that. A lot of people, you know, might have never met you just because there's nothing that's kind of unique. And with some of the gimmicks, you know, like flamingos or orange shirts or whatever, those are all kind of branding tricks.
Yep.
But, you know, I do think you kind of want to stand out, and you got to figure out how you can do that and be unique, right, in the marketplace.
And I've talked to you a bit about this previously, where it's like, okay, how do you compete in AP automation? And the answer is you kind of got to find something else. You got to find a different angle on how you can spin it, because there's just too much.
Yeah, AP automation tends to be a very crowded space. So you do have to find what your unique value is. We've talked about that.
Talking on that,
yeah, and you know, like I feel like at the expo hall and the ISV booths and so forth, those are all really great, but you've got to kind of communicate what you are.
Yep.
In just a few seconds. Because if I'm walking by and I see a booth and I'm like, I have no clue what they do. Yep. Their signage doesn't tell me. And maybe they're trying to draw you in so they can have that conversation. That's not a bad strategy. I'm just saying, like, I'd rather know, oh, you do e-commerce. I get it. You know, tell me about that. Or you do process workflows and training. Okay, I get that. Tell me more, you know, or you do shipping. I appreciate that signage or some clue what it is you do, right?
Yep.
You know, don't make me ask.
For sure. Probably the third or fourth time I've mentioned this book that would still blow in my mind. Playing to Win is the book that's got me thinking about all this stuff. And it's just like, okay, what are we truly the best at? Is there a thing that we're the best at? And how do we communicate just that? Because everything else is going to get lost to the filter of, oh, I know what AP automation is. I don't need to look into that. I've already looked into it. So it's like, how do you break through that and determine what you're truly the best at?
And I think it's not just what do you do, but who you are, right? You know, again, back to that relationship. You want to build that relationship so people think of you. I mean, there's some ISVs that have been on the channel a long time, and that people know them. And they're like, oh, yeah, I know so-and-so that works there, or I've talked to them before. You know, they're always relating it now when you get kind of past the sort of like, check the box, I know what you do. Now, who are you and who do I know there, you know? So they have that comfort level of knowing someone.
Yeah. And that's been a learning experience too. There's like two different ways to approach getting known in the space. And I won't mention names on these people, but there's the people who splash out on the giant expo booth with like the electric TVs, you know what I mean? Like all sorts of fanciness, and they've got a ton of people and like picture perfect branding and everything. And then there's like the other ISVs that have just been in the channel for ages and everybody knows them. And it's like, well, what's more valuable?
Yeah, and they could have a crowd around their booth all the time, and 100%. They didn't really spend a lot, right? Because they've developed the relationships, right? They've invested in that people that they work with and their customers. So yeah, I agree. You know, sometimes it's not the big booth that can be the draw.
So, what are your favorite things about going to these events? I think I probably know the answer, but I'll still officially ask it.
Well, you know, I do like learning and kind of, you know, getting more, I guess, aware of what's going on in the industry and hearing from keynotes and, you know, kind of entities like Microsoft or Acumatica themselves. but I kind of comes down to networking, right? Connecting with people, hearing about their journey and where they're at, what they're looking for. And, I just really enjoy being part of a community. And I think most people do, right? And so if you feel like you belong, you kind of find your home. It's a good feeling, right? You're enjoying your professional career. You might as well enjoy it and like the people you work with. And so I think meeting people in person is amazing, and so that's what I look forward to.
Yeah, that's really good. I think the community aspect is kind of hard to overstate. That's been largely the theme of my life over the past few years. I've realized, like, I'm coming out of that age bracket where they're just like so transient for so long, right? Like I've lived in like 5 or 6 different towns like in Michigan, so it's like I don't really live anywhere, I just sort of like show up and do the same things I always do and don't really become a part of the community. And now I'm finally like trying to become engaged in the like local community that I'm living in. Yeah. It's like changing my perspective on a lot of different things, because I see that in this like work community that I was also sort of not a part of for a long time. So I've just been like floating between communities for
right. It kind of sounds like you're keeping your work life and personal life separate, which is fine.
It's not great. It's tiring to like keep those two things separate, and it just like I don't know. You feel
some of the people that I consider friends, they've been past colleagues, and I always reach out to them. I have them on my Facebook, so it's different when you get to know people personally and keep those, blur those lines, if you will, between work and professional and personal.
Yeah, for sure. So that's been my theme. I hear you on that. And along that vein, what have been the changes that you've seen in the community over the past few years, I guess, or maybe more explicitly, like how has COVID changed this community? Because that's like the elephant in the room, right? Like how much of this has changed just because of that, or were we on this course anyway?
Well, and that's
tough,
a
right?
big topic. I guess what I've seen is that, people have discovered they can work remote, right? I used to work for an employer who said, you need to be in the office if you're not at a client. And I'm like, why? I have to drive there, I have to get dressed, it's like, it's an expense, and I can work more efficiently from home. So, I think that people in businesses discover that they could do that. And oh, by the way, it might actually save some money and not having to, pay for mileage or people, coming into the office and having the office available. Kind of all the things like when I was kind of a younger professional, we had game rooms and, happy hours, or we called it unwinders. Friday, where we had a beer in the afternoon on Friday, so all those kind of things sort of disappeared because you couldn't do them, right? Yeah. So I think people kind of realize what really is important, in my work life. I want to get in, get my things done, talk to the people I need to, and then I want to go do something else. I don't want my life committed to work. Yeah. So I think people kind of that whole great resignation, I think really is about kind of reevaluating what's my priorities. And, I'm at home now and I've got all the little ones at home, and, those are my priorities, not the work, that is what supports and feeds my family. So I think there's been a big evaluation. So I think that has affected people's attitudes and maybe driven people to retire or change roles. And really push back, being able to work from home is work. It does work, and consulting, I always work remote. So, it's not new for me, but I think a lot of businesses, and I think in the partner channel too, I think they're also getting a lot of requests for automation, right? Because people aren't going in the office. So, okay, we can't send those invoices to the office and then someone put them in the inner office mail and then someone approve them and then someone enter them. I mean, it has to be automated, right? And it has to be a workflow that anybody from anywhere can approve that invoice and see it electronically. So I think that's really pushed that digital transformation. A lot of people that might have resisted cloud now realize, we have to be able to work remotely. And how do you do that? You have to be virtual. So I think that's really been the biggest changes I've seen, is people going to the cloud or being more virtual and more automation.
I think like conferences are sort of going to become more valuable over the next few years too, because when we're like a remote first world, it's not just a time to like network and meet like your like partners or whatever. Like you're literally hanging out with your other employees that you might not see on the regular. Right. So I feel like they're going to get more and more important. I feel like that's going to be something that increases in frequency and attendance, and I think we're already seeing that, right? Like the conferences in the past year have all been like breaking attendance, right?
Yeah,
and I think that's part of it. I
definitely think back in person has made a comeback for sure. Even like with directions, you know, I heard John say they had expectations to break 1,000 here pretty soon on their registration, so that's pretty amazing because you know, that'll be the biggest event if they get over 1,000, I think, than any in-person event they had in the past. So, yeah, I think there's definitely demand. And that's a good point about meeting with colleagues, right? Yeah. You know, a lot of companies take advantage of that and do events kind of before or after, you know, the conferences to get together as a team. So that's a good point.
Yeah, actually hang out with people. So I think I don't know, it's interesting, right? Everything's always changing and we're all sort of adapting the best we can. But it really seems like conferences are here to stay and here to stay in a bigger way than they probably were beforehand.
Yeah, I think virtual conferences, you know, like next week is Dynamics Con virtual. And I think it still has a very viable place in the community, right? There's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to be allowed to travel or want to travel. Yeah. And they get that education, that community participation at some level, right? So it's still valuable. But I definitely think that, in person is back.
Yeah.
The trade shows, even on the industry side, the trade shows are coming back, you know, by industry. And so I hear a lot of, you know, partners or ISVs that are vertical going to those events now too.
Yeah. That's definitely where we're at. So it makes sense to me.
Yeah.
So I guess sort of in conclusion on this, do you have anything coming up that you want to like speak to specifically? I'm not sure. I guess I didn't ask if you had a session. I'm not sure if you have a session at Directions. Is that something that you have or?
Yeah, that's no, I don't. Okay. I did submit a speaker session and they had 300 people submit sessions and they only had like 100 spots. So unfortunately, I didn't make the cut, but I mean, I think it's always good to submit a session and be a speaker if you know, and sometimes you feel like, okay, I don't know what to speak about, but you know, you think about in your world, what are the things that people have challenges on? What kind of tips and tricks can you share? And I think that everybody, it's sort of like everybody has a book in them. I think everybody has a speaker, you know, topic in them too, right? So.
Yeah, I'm still waiting. I'm waiting until I think I've got something compelling to say, but it's percolating on the background.
You know what? Sometimes, Kevin, you need to just do it. Just do it. Like pick something you think would be, you know, like 5 tips in AP, you know, automation or something, you know, something that you think that you're kind of an expert in. And then you have to prepare and research anyway. I mean, most people put down topics that they know they have to do some learning anyway. So that's okay. I think that's
definitely something I have to get into more. I'd be very comfortable at it. So that means I should probably just do it. I just don't want to. Don't want to be a fake expert. I dislike fake experts in things, so I'm just making sure I'm actually an expert before I say something.
In an hour, you're the expert. I look at it this way: you know more than the person that's there. Sure. Maybe you know this much more, but you're still maybe know more about it than they do. So,
all right, I'll start submitting more aggressively. I've been doing it back burner, but I do need to do it more.
Yeah. I think you should, for sure.
Yeah, so anybody who still hasn't registered, if you're watching this, I have a feeling you're probably registered. But if you're watching maybe the replay of this on LinkedIn or something, there's a chance that you're not registered. There is still time to register for Directions. It is not officially sold out. I think it might. And at 5 weeks out, I think they might cap it at some point in the near future. So if you're not registered, go register.
We were just talking about this, that they have only the preliminary agenda out there. So pretty soon I'm expecting to see the detailed sessions. So I think that's when a lot of people make a commitment to go, is when they see the detailed sessions and they kind of figure out who on the team should be attending. And One thing I will say, and I'm looking forward to, so it'll be interesting, is I've heard that a lot more decision makers attend this conference and not others. So that's kind of like if you need to get in front of or meet those people. That's a good. It's a good event to attend just from that perspective. This is where they tend to go. It's their community too, so
yeah,
they tend to attend this one. But yeah, I think that session listing will help people kind of make that decision. But if you haven't pulled the trigger yet, there's still time.
For sure. Okay. Any closing thoughts here, Carol? That's all I've been trying to keep these under an hour, and I think we're right on schedule,
yeah,
so we're doing perfect.
Well, yeah, thank you for having me on. And so yeah, we should compare notes after directions and see if we any of the tips and tricks that we learned over your LinkedIn live sessions, if we
maybe that's how I'll get back to this. I need to do a post check-in and be like, wow, I was totally wrong about all these things.
Let's do a debrief. Yeah, that would be great. Kind of like, what did we learn? What would we do different? Yeah.
Maybe I'll bring my laptop down and we'll do something on the, I don't know. I'll be great. I'll be brainstorming things. We'll come up with the next step. So thanks to everybody for watching this live. It's always nice to have people in the live room. If you're watching this recorded, appreciate that as well. And we will be back with some new live series soon, pending some details, but check me out on LinkedIn. I'm sure I'll be posting about it soon enough. And Carol, thank you so much for your time, and great to have you on.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
Signing off now.